Ordinance and Charter and Rules Committee meeting to order first. I'll entertain a motion, I guess, to open the meeting just on ordinance end between just the Ordinance Committee, which would be Councilor Linda Bacon, Councilor Jenny Rivera, Councilor Meg McGrath-Smith, and myself, Councilor Israel Rivera. With us, Councilor Bartley can't make it tonight. He'll catch up with us on via video. So I'll entertain a motion to open the meeting.
So moved.
Do your second. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. That's 4 ayes. And then
Motion to open Charter and Rules. It is Wednesday, April 16th, 2025 at 6:30 p.m. I'm the chair of Charter and Rules. To my left is Councilor Tessa Murphy-Ambletti, and online we have Councilor Bacon. I'll entertain a motion to open the Charter and Rules meeting.
So moved.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So, I guess you said you wanted to clarify some stuff for item 1 first in Charter and Rules. So you guys can go ahead and do that first, and then we'll move on with taking up particular orders. Because I know I have an order on item number 6 that I kind of wanted to take up quick to get that out of the way.
Can you guys do this remote thing first?
Yes. All
we
right.
will.
A motion to take a roll call vote that for the purposes of this meeting, which would be applicable to all motions to receive, to refer items to committee, remove items from the table, place items on the table, package items together, comply with items, or suspend the rules unless there is an objection.
So moved.
All in favor, I guess?
Aye.
Aye. Do we have a second for that?
Aye. Second?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
So yeah, as I was
Sure.
saying,
Well, do you want to take that one up first then? Just like with an ordinance to quickly finish that. That's fine.
I don't see Councilor Ocasio, because I see that there's an amendment that she would like to be made to this. So yes, I can entertain a motion to take up item 6 off the agenda or the floor.
Second.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. So item 6 was filed by Councilor Ocasio. She was present. She stepped out for a second, but originally the order was filed that DPW install a handicap sign for Anna Rodriguez at 361 Chestnut Street. This order, I'm understanding, needs to be amended to Susana Morales instead of Anna Rodriguez. Jeff, can you clarify that real quick?
Sure, yeah, so when this was filed and when I sent it to the Disabilities Commission for approval, they asked that the daughter's name be actually the name that's assigned to the application because the applicant, Ms. Rodriguez, is blind, and it's actually her daughter who would be driving her. And so even though the handicap placard belongs to Ms. Rodriguez, because Ms. Morales is the one who would be driving, the application would have to be in her name. I spoke with the city clerk, and she said that it would be fine to just have the committee make the amendment on the floor.
And then did we get a recommendation from the Disabilities Commission?
Yep, they did approve it, just pending that fix.
Okay, so then can I entertain someone to make the amendment?
I'll make a motion that we amend the handicap sign to be named under Susana Morales.
Perfect. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Roll call vote. Councilor Bacon?
Yes.
Councilor Jenny Rivera?
Yes.
Councilor Meg McGrath-Smith?
Yes.
And then Councilor Israel Rivera, yes. That passes unanimously. So that'll be forwarded to, oh no, that's just an amendment. And then,
So now I'll make a motion to
now-
approve the handicap sign for Susana Morales.
do I hear a second?
Second?
Thank you.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Roll call vote. Councilor Bacon?
Yes.
Councilor Jenny Rivera?
Yes.
Councilor Meg McGrath-Smith?
Yes.
And then Counselor Israel Rivera, yes. That passes unanimously. So with that, we are done with item number 6. Counselor Ocasio, I seen you just walked in. We made the amendment for, what was it, Anna Rodriguez. Instead of it being in Anna Rodriguez's name, we made it to Susana Morales' name, just to be clear. All right, thank you, and then you can go ahead with item 1.
Thank you. One shift that I think needs to happen before we can take items up to be able to discuss jointly is that an ordinance, when we took up the original order that got sent to both committees, we made amendments that we now need to pair, in charter and rules. So I would like us, if I could entertain a motion for us to amend item 2 to match the language in item 1.
So moved.
So we have to take up item 2.
Yes. So motion to take up item 2, take it off the table.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion to amend item 2 to match the language in item 1.
So moved. Or was that, do you want me to second? I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. So with that piece of business aside, the goal of this meeting is for us to be able to weed through the details and also to receive and discuss the new documentation that we have been provided. And I realize that some counselors have been able to read it through and mark it up. Others may not have been able to because it was sent this afternoon. But we have the opportunity for us to go through these documents and discuss it, and also for us to hear from the folks who are here. So we are joined in chambers by Rory Casey, our current and final elected treasurer. And if our guests want to all come in and join us, we're also joined by the mayor, and we are joined by representatives from HR and tax collector, Laura. Yes, you're right. And I also see financial consultant TJ Plant online. And thank you all for joining us tonight. Really appreciate it.
Do we want to entertain a motion to take up 1, 2, 3?
I'll make a motion to suspend the rules and take up items 1. No, wait. I can't really take up 1 because I'm not on ordinance, right?
No, so what I'll do is motion to take up, on the ordinance committee, I'll entertain a motion to take up 1, 4, 5, and 4 and 5 as a package.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Charter and rules motion for us to take up items.
Roll call vote. Roll call vote.
Sorry, you're right. Roll call vote.
Roll call vote. Counselor Bacon?
Why are we putting the whole reorg with the treasurer collector issue? Or you just want to discuss them all interchangeably?
Yes.
That is
Okay,
the intention.
yes.
And just to be clarified to the public, the goal is so that we as 2 joint committees come together into one committee to have a clear conversation instead of running back and forth in different committees and then having different communications get lost in translation because of the committees working on different days and different time schedules. So here we're trying to address a particular issue together in one particular joint committee to make sure that we have all the people at the table voicing all their opinions or processes, not just opinions, and steps and research that they put together to make sure that we are able to come up with a system or a solution that is equitable and efficient for not only us as departments and not only just everyone here, but also the city and the taxpayers too as well. But thank you for that clarification. But yes, roll call vote, Councilor Bacon,
Yes.
Councilor Jenny Rivera,
Yes.
Councilor Meg McGrath-Smith,
Yes.
and then Councilor Israel Rivera, yes, 4-0.
Motion for charter and rules to take up items 2 and 3.
So moved.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Oh, yes, roll call vote, you're right.
Why we do that?
Yeah, for taking items off
Okay,
the table.
go ahead.
We can still do, we don't have to do a roll call vote for
No,
items.
it's okay. Go ahead.
I do it anyways, just in case, because I'm busy. So I have to be sure.
Okay.
Okay. Counselor Murphy-Ormaletti?
Yes.
Counselor Bacon?
Yes,
Counselor McGrath-Smith? Yes. So what I would love to do is if we could start by talking about the new reorg chart in its most revised form, which is in our packets. Does anyone online need it, or does everyone have access to it digitally?
we have it on our email.
Okay, great.
Maybe you could Jeff could just pull it up.
Jeffrey, if you could also bring it up on the screen, or Rory could if you give him sharing access. So I know that part of this meeting is, we had a first pass at this. Both committees were able to meet separately and to discuss it and just to receive it and understand what the current thinking was, to share some of our initial thinking based on that and some questions that counselors had. My understanding is that this is now a second draft, hoping to clarify certain counselors' questions and also to make some shifts based on the concerns and initial thoughts that counselors provided. So if you would not mind, Mr. Casey, walking us through the shifts in your presentation and any clarification that you want to share at this time.
Yep, thank you very much. So I think at the last meeting, which was a very productive meeting, and some of the conversations that individual counselors have had and reached out since, we've provided some additional information. Some of it will go through in this updated slide presentation, but I just want to confirm that at this point, the council has received draft ordinances from the law department that have both what the existing language is that would be removed or amended and what the new language would be. Job descriptions based on that draft, those draft ordinances. Examples from the city of Springfield, and we do have TJ Plant on with us as well, who can speak more in depth about them, which are the kind of deliverables that you could expect from a CAFO and within a centralized finance operation, specifically, how orders, budget transfers, things like that first flow through the CAFO, where right now it's just a sign off from the mayor. And then some financial information because of some of the assertions that we made, and rightfully so. The council wanted to get a better understanding about what we mean when we say budget neutrality and potential cost savings. So I'm just going to breeze through these first couple of slides because there really is no update. This is really just for anybody that might not have been present, since we went over this in just charter and rules last time, where we have the joint meeting now. So this is just the goal that we're looking for: modernized functions, increased efficiencies and cost savings. And this is where we're going to go a little bit more in depth here. Improved accountability, and what that means. And so then we get to this this slide here, which really this is nearly identical to the slide that was presented last time for the current organizational structure. The difference here being that we added in the existing cost and then what the projected costs would be for fiscal 26 and fiscal 27. And we'll get a little bit more in depth in what makes up those numbers. These are just top line numbers. And I think it's also important to note that, this is, when we look at 26 and 27, it's based on real numbers with some projections, built into place, and also the understanding that we don't have a fiscal 26 budget yet because the mayor won't be presenting that until May, regardless of what structure we have, and the council ultimately will get to vote and decide on what will be appropriated. So I don't want anyone to walk away thinking that this is like what we expect it to be, or, that this, meaning we assume that certain people's pay or anything else is what it is until the council approves it. So this slide, when we take a look at what we're at right now,
Real quick.
yes, sir.
Just to be clear for
Yeah.
anyone online, this
Yep.
is the existing finance structure. This
Correct.
is what it is right now.
This is the way it is right now and what was budgeted for in fiscal '25. So for example, there is no CAFO right now, but the CAFO position was budgeted for. So when we talk about the total cost of this and looking at the existing budget and how we remove things like we went over last time, that's why I just want to be very clear, this is what was budgeted. And so then if we go to the next slide, what we can see is the proposed finance structure. Again, no real changes here. I will just note, for anybody keeping track, because of some of the ongoing union negotiations and changes that were already being put into place as far as people's positions were concerned, there are two positions that are retitled on this slide from the original slide, which is the account payable specialist, which is an existing position in the purchasing office. It was inventory control, listed as inventory control. That was an antiquated term. This has been updated for what their current position is. And same thing in the treasurer's office right now. It would be a payroll specialist, but we're moving that to be a financial analyst, which is just kind of an all-encompassing term. But the costs are what are most important here, separate from the structure. And what we can see is the fiscal '26 cost listed here is pretty much flat with the fiscal '25 cost of the existing structure, which is what we talked about, it being budget neutral. And that in the subsequent year, '27, it's less than what was approved in the operating budget right now for fiscal '25. It's reduced by about $100,000, and we'll go and explain what that is. So this next slide, and there are handouts.
Excuse me.
Yes,
Just
Can I
Councilor
ask-
Bacon.
of course.
Thank you. So what I'm understanding is you're comparing budget to budget. And if, say, for example, the CAFO that didn't exist but was budgeted, what I'm interested in understanding is cost, actual cost from this year to next year and the year after. I understand you're comparing budget to budget, but when we're talking about the potential tax impact, we need to understand what the cost is. Thank you.
Absolutely, and that takes us to the next slide.
Perfect timing.
Yep. And so this was provided earlier. There's a handout here, but everybody should have gotten a separate PDF with this document. This format should be familiar for folks. It's essentially what our budget book looks like now. There's a couple of things to note here when we're looking through this, that the first column, approved FY25, these are the costs that were approved. We're focused on personnel service primarily here. Down at the bottom where we get into the expense lines, what those expense lines represent, I'm going to come back to this, but I just want to briefly point it out. Those represent the contracted services that are listed here on the existing organizational chart. And this is where we're paying for contracted service third parties to perform work that we could be doing ourselves and should be doing ourselves. Most other communities are doing themselves, but in Holyoke, because of how we're organized, we're actually contracting with third parties to do that. So that's why we focused on these expense lines. And so when we take a look here and we see what this is actually what was budgeted. All these positions are currently budget, have a place in the budget and exist. If we were to keep everything as is and not make any changes, that's what these next two columns represent, both for 26 and 27. The 26 numbers, are not just an estimate. This is actually what it would look like based on the current working budget, based on contractual obligations. A lot of these folks are either in NAGE or PSA. There are some Schedule A employees as well. And so the mayor's directive is that he didn't want to see any budgets outside of those contractual agreements above 2%. So that's what we're looking at here, is essentially a 2% escalation in these numbers. And then also based on, when we get down to the expenses, what we would need to continue to have these third parties perform work on our behalf. And so when we get into the fourth column, we start seeing the proposed fiscal 26. And there's a couple of things I just want to point out. So we're talking about a total net decrease of 2 full-time employees under this proposed structure. That certainly goes to part of the cost savings in addition to reducing contractual service. But if you count the number of lines, right now you're going to count 19, and you might ask, well, they said 18, why is it 19? Well, that's just because of the fact that right now, until some of these changes are in place, or even if certain changes were to take place, the existing treasurer's position, my position, unless I resign, is filled until January. So this essentially takes half a year of that position and budgets it. And then the same thing, with the eye towards combining treasurer collector, makes an adjustment in that so that they would be getting paid their regular current salary for the first half of the year, and then an adjustment would be made when that position would be combined. So I just wanted to point that out. And then we get into the fiscal 27.
Councilor Vacan has a question real quick.
Sure.
And Councilor Vacan, you can ask your question, but after this, I don't know if it's okay, Rory, you want to continue like this, or do you want to just...
We can do it however the committee, whatever the committee...
Because I'm cool with it too.
Yeah.
It's just like, I just want to keep cutting you off in the middle of your talking.
There's great questions.
All right,
They
so
should be asked.
go ahead, Councilor Vacan. Go ahead, do your thing.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that there will be a savings because you're looking at a budgeted amount, as an example, for CAFO of 150,000 in this current budget, but we haven't spent 150,000 on a CAFO. So it appears to be a savings in the budget if you're showing a lower number the next year, but the actual expense that we have had relative to that line is zero. So it's a savings within the budget, but it is not a savings in terms of what we have actually expended in this category this year. That's what I'm trying to clarify, because we're talking about saving money, saving positions, but there were budgeted dollars put in for a position that didn't exist. So we couldn't spend the money, so we can't save that money. I understand it from a budgetary point of view, but not from actual cost point of view.
Councilor
Thank you.
Vacan, if I may, I think not only focusing on the CAFO, but I think it's looking at other categories too as well, and seeing where there is an actual save. And it might not be like you're saving a tons of money because you're restructuring and you're replacing and you're putting in new positions, but I think the idea is that you're kind of offsetting certain costs because you're able to save in the restructure. So yeah, you're kind of right
If I
in
may,
the point
Mr.
that...
Chairman,
Go ahead.
I do know what I'm talking about here.
I'm not saying
So-
you don't, but go ahead.
So what I want to make sure is clearly documented and understood. What are the actual expenses for this year compared to what they would be for next year? Not what was budgeted and not spent, but what was actually spent. Thank you. That's just going to be the information I'm looking for. I understand the concepts. I understand the way that it's being framed, but I'm looking for something a little different.
Thank you. If we could be as clear as we can, just to be sure, so that way there are no confusions as to what we're presenting here. Thank you. Go ahead, Rory.
Yeah, and if the mayor wants to chime in as well, what I can say is I do understand Councilor Vacan's point. I'd also say that there's two things to note. First is, you're right that position wasn't filled. It was budgeted for. It wasn't filled because it's not on a salary schedule to be hired. There's also lines within this budget on this sheet here under the approved fiscal year 25 budget that haven't been filled. They were budgeted for at the beginning of the year, and they haven't been filled, but they're included here because when we're looking at what the total budgeted amount was year over year, that's what we're basing this on, right? We're saying it's going to be budget neutral, meaning that the budgeted amount in 26 would be equal to what was budgeted in total for 25. And then additional savings or moving positions around come from not, taking an unfilled position and reworking it, moving it into a different department, eliminating it from the budget in its current form, which is what you can see in kind of these grayed out lines with the zeros next to them. If for example, we want to take, any of the positions that don't currently exist at all in the budget, whether budgeted for or on a salary schedule and budgeted for. You see zeros across those first three columns, and then on the subsequent two columns, you see other lines that become zeroed out. Those are positions that exist currently in the budget that we're zeroing out. So that's one thing. The other thing I would note, as it relates specific to the CAFO and some of the cost savings budget to budget, not actual expenses, but budget to budget, is that the $150,000 was just a placeholder that the mayor picked. When we were really getting and fine-tuning this, working with the personnel office, working with the law department, and hearing what was asked at the last ordinance meeting, I think specifically by Councilor Bartley, which was, please show us job descriptions and what salary ranges would be and make it as realistic as possible. When we did that and we looked at the existing Schedule A and we looked at what grade we would want to put the CAFO into where it fit, 150 was too high. That was above the mid-range. And as we all know, we can't hire above the mid-range. We shouldn't be assuming that we can hire above the mid-range. That's a message I know I've heard loud and clear from the council. So to that end, the number of 136 that's in here now is that mid-range number. And we then had another conversation about, well, will that be appealing? And when we looked at other communities and we looked at what folks are being hired at that have the skill set that we're looking at, that I think we'll get more into, or the committee itself will get more into, that's a realistic number, that we felt comfortable with that number. We felt that could be attractive to somebody. So I don't know, Mayor, if you want to chime in at all.
No, and thank you so much, Rory. I think you're doing a good job. This is, I don't want to say worst case scenario, but this is kind of like looking at, I don't know what's the proper way, best case scenario, where there's when you start getting into it, and I think Rory just shared just one example. Maybe we can say is a much more conservative outlook, but certainly might be able to realize more additional savings greater than that, just that flat 100,000. And the other thing too is, and I know it's important, we're getting into the nitty gritty and understanding where the savings are. Important for me is the efficiencies that we can potentially achieve because of this restructuring and redeployment of resources, where there are unrealized savings just by being able to do the job much more effectively, efficiently, keeping up with our obligations, avoiding liabilities, and maximizing our potential to support the departments that rely on these particular functions to execute the services for the community. So there's that important component of the conversation as well. So those are two important points I thought we should include.
Okay. Yeah.
I have a question around the under expenses, looking at, these are all of the different consulting services that we're using. And so I'm wondering why I see the computer consulting services line is projected under this plan to go down 40,000. The software license and usage fees is projected to go down 6,747 or 745. Systems, hardware, and software maintenance is supposed to stay the same. Professional assessment services goes down 10,000, and professional accounting and auditing goes down 45,000. So I would just love to understand how those savings are realized.
Yeah, sure. Those are really good questions. So we can start with the numbers that aren't going down and why they're included in here. Why would we include them if they're, it's to be fully transparent that, some of those lines, when it relates to software license and usage fees, right? Or systems, hardware, and system maintenance, that's actually paying for the license for, platforms like Zoom, platforms like our email, paying for all the various licenses. So that's not where we would see a cost savings. However, that is a budget line that right now there's no one owner of that, right? And that's what we're hoping as we centralize, is that the IT, which really is an important piece of our infrastructure, would have better managed. It would be better managed. So that's why those lines are included. Now, the lines that are going down when it relates to computer consulting services, professional assessment, and the professional accounting and auditing, those are some of the lines that we are being conservative, right? We feel those numbers actually might go down further. We think there could be greater savings in those lines if this plan comes to fruition and we're able to hire the right people and really by we get to fiscal 27 when we have a full year like this, that we would be able to see savings. What is being paid for right now is our 24/7 help desk. I mean, when I've sat in front of this council before, and I don't want to go down the rabbit hole with right now, but I've talked about cybersecurity. I've talked about some of the issues we face. We are under attack every day. And so we need to have a 24/7 operation. No one's suggesting the city pays for staff operating 24/7. That's why we contract with somebody. Well, I shouldn't say unfortunate. The reality is that the firm we contract right now is also acting as our chief information officer, IT project manager. They had been our system administrator for some different softwares where we actually do need regular system administration, but they said they can no longer provide that service. So we had a contract with a different third party. Those are all tasks that could easily be handled by a staff person that is going to make less than we're paying contractors, and we would get a better service because we'd actually have somebody here, not a few days a week. Maybe they're at the police station, maybe they're here. We'd actually have somebody here. So we'd have to the mayor's point, we'd have a better service, and it would cost us less if we had the staff. When we look at the assessment and the auditing piece, again, these are things that right now we're contracting for. We're having somebody come in and produce our real estate tax bills. We're paying somebody to come in here and sit at a computer to be able to do that. Now, prior to upgrading our financial system, our enterprise system, we talk about a 30-year upgrade. That's real. It made sense because we didn't have the capacity to do it, and it was such an antiquated system, we had to pay somebody to come in and do it. The system we currently have in place, if the staff were properly aligned and trained and were able to focus in on actually doing that work, we wouldn't need to pay somebody else to come in and do that. So we see that, but we also want to respect the fact there might be some needs that come up. So we don't want to zero it out artificially to show an artificial savings. And it'd be real easy for us to come in here and say, it's $200,000 worth of savings, but we want to be realistic in what we're showing the council, not just on budgeted, but what's on actually being spent. Same thing with the auditing lines. Again, we're paying our outside auditing firm to do additional work that other communities and the Department of Revenue want us to be doing. It's not a best practice to be paying someone else to do. It's something we should be doing ourselves, but we're paying thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars annually for somebody else to come in and do it. That's not our annual audit. That's not the things that we absolutely need to budget and pay someone else to do. These are things that we should be doing internally. So when we talk about the Comptroller working in collaboration with the Director of Internal Audit and the CAFO and the Treasurer Collector, those are the types of things we'd be able to start doing internally, and we would see those savings.
And just to be clear too, like we do that and we need to do it because of the current structure that we're in. It helps departments keep up with what it is that they need to do that we expect them to do. So, within our existing structure, where we can't handle things, we try to farm out and make sure that we're able to, at minimum, keep up with the obligations of those departments. But with the redeployment structure, ideally, we should be able to take care of more things in-house and outsource less.
Thank you. Since we're asking questions, right? Can you guys talk about more about what the comptroller is going to do?
Sure.
And then you mentioned briefly about the director of IT, and then how the CAFO would fit in,
Yep.
right? And then if it for some reason it doesn't work out, right, for the time being, how the treasurer collector would fall in and how roles get assumed or whatnot.
Yep.
Just to expand a little more on how, while we're restructuring and putting new positions, we're still consolidating some of our positions and making it more efficient, hopefully, and working in a direction where in the future there's a cost savings to how we do our work, not necessarily physical dollars, but just how we do our work efficiently would save us money in the long term.
Absolutely. So what I'll do is I'll keep moving along, and then I think at a certain point we could have TJ join for this second part of this slide presentation. So I'll just finish up with the financial piece, which is just another slide or two. And obviously we can always go back, and we're here to answer all the questions because this is a great conversation. So this next slide, this really just takes everything that we've talked about so far and breaks it down to its simplest form, just exactly what it looks like. This is what was budgeted in fiscal 25 as is. If we were to stay as is, this is what we would expect to need in budget, and really what we would need to be able to keep things together, knowing that we're still behind the eight ball. To your point, Councilor Rivera, about the other costs and the benefit, not just hard dollars, which we can demonstrate, but also those efficiencies and other things that allow for us to work on a much faster pace, not constantly be chasing our tails and digging out of holes or putting out fires. And then we see the proposed numbers here. And so again, what you see in fiscal year 26, when you compare the budgeted amount from 25 to the budgeted amount proposed under the new structure in fiscal 26, it's essentially flat. It's $153 more, but that's just rounding. But that is, essentially flat. When we get into fiscal 27, as was mentioned earlier in the slide and talked about throughout, that's where we start seeing actual savings. And it's not often that you're able to say, with contractual increases and with cost of living increases and with everything else that's necessary, that for all of these positions in these key departments, think about it, these are the departments that people are in every single day of the week, the tax collector, the treasurer, the assessor, purchasing, that this really is the backbone of the city in so many ways, auditing. we're able to reduce money and get a better product. So that's what this slide shows. And again, I know we went over this last time, but just to talk again, this is how appointments would work. The council would continue to appoint the director of internal audit, the city auditor. They would appoint the treasurer collector, and they appoint the chief assessor. The mayor, with council approval, under this proposed structure, would appoint the CAFO. And there's a whole process about selection committee and how the CAFO is hired and everything else that I know the committee will probably review is their ordinance review. And the chief procurement officer is appointed by the mayor and approved by the council. And then the CAFO themselves would be able to appoint some of the folks that would be working as part of the centralized finance department, the Comptroller, and the director of technical service. And so this is where I think if the committee was willing to maybe have TJ Plant kind of jump in, and I can move through these slides. TJ, if you're available, and maybe talk a little bit, just recap high level, what is CAFO, and then what's this structure that we've been talking about.
Sure. Mr. Chair, through you, am I ready to recognize the speaker?
Yeah, I was just checking in right now. If we had to suspend the rules, I was told you can just go right ahead.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so really, we've done a lot of work recently in Holyoke on talking about creating this CAFO position. And I kind of, as I mentioned in the last meeting, came into it relatively recently, but just to kind of lend some insight into kind of the experience that I've had and certainly other communities have had, and this is the direction that most communities are going as it relates to financial management. And really the goal of the CAFO is just to kind of be the person that kind of oversees all the financial functions, IT functions, and to make sure everything is aligned with the vision of the city and the mayor and the city council and saying, okay, here's what we're looking to do. So you link up setting the tax rate, you link up the budget, you link up IT uniform systems, Munis in your case, you link up procurement. So they all kind of work together in harmony. And it's one of those situations where you can just be very strategic and very deliberate in what you're doing as a city, and that's kind of what the person would bring to the table as it relates to budget development, capital improvement plan, just general oversight, like financial management. Really, what it comes down to, like if you're looking at your projections and your projections are saying, "Wow, we're really tight on in this area," you can free spending or you can slow it down. You can provide extra scrutiny to purchases and to, you can review overtime if overtime is becoming a problem. It's all those things that, that you can just kind of do when you're like midway through the year and decide we need a course correction. So then you just decide on like, what does that look like and how does it impact the services, and everything really comes down to the services that the taxpayers expect from the city. They do definitely involved, should be heavily involved in the debt issuances and the capital, linking it to the capital plan. And I did include, and we don't have to get into it, a debt affordability analysis that, should be done for most communities, if not every community, that says, here's where we are, here's what it looks like, because they're heavily involved in structuring the debt portfolio. And that, and then it's, what is the market telling you? Is it short-term debt because the market is volatile right now and then you issue long-term debt? Or is it, hey, when rates are low, let's issue long-term debt right now? And then, also the collective bargaining piece can't be understated, because that is, everything comes down to the people and the employees and the workers, especially those that have collective bargaining agreements, and making sure that they are fair, but are also sustainable. I don't know, Mayor, if you want me to cover anything else related to the over general thing about the CAFO.
TJ, before we move on to the next slide with Comptroller, could you just speak a little bit more about, because I know this is something that's come up in some of the conversations we've had, and I think you've had as well, just kind of reinforcing how this position would operate independent. Obviously, they're a department head. There's a certain level of oversight that every department has, but how they would work independent and kind of how you see that happening here in Holyoke. And
Yeah, Roy, that's a great point. So that's actually a kind of a key piece to this position, is having a level of independence and reporting requirements to advise the mayor, but also report to the city council. And what I intended by providing the documents I sent over this afternoon was to show there's a level of due diligence that needs to happen to make sure that this A is affordable, and B, it's sound fiscal policy and it's being done correctly, and B, reporting it out to not only the city council but also to the public in a very transparent way. And the level of independence really comes down to the fact that the position should be able to kind of step in and say, time out, let's talk this through, let's work through it, let's build consensus, let's make sure we're all on the same page, and then come out with it on a united front. And I think that is an important piece to what this role provides. And if the ordinances are set up right or correctly, the CAFO should be able to kind of like not provide the CAFO certification that in Springfield, we had Chapter 468, which was crystal clear. It was a state law. You're going the ordinance direction, from what I understand, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. The ordinance should state what the CAFO's powers are and what they're expected to do in order to sign off on any financial transfer or investment or any of those things.
TJ, we can see in our packet that we have a sample order that was generated by the CAFO in Springfield. This was dated February 8th, 2023. Is this the type of order that you would imagine is being created in our this proposed ordinance language? If we look at page 4, underneath roles and responsibilities, responsibilities and duties, underneath that for C and D, it says all department budgets and requests for budget transfers shall be submitted to the CAFO for review and recommendation by the Department of Administration and Finance prior to the submission to the mayor, city council, or school committee as appropriate. D, for each and every proposed appropriation order and with respect to any proposed city council vote necessary to effectuate a financial transfer, ordinance revision, or special legislation which may require the expenditure of funds or otherwise financially obligate the city for a period in excess of 1 year, or with respect to a vote to authorize a borrowing pursuant to a provision of law other than Mass General Law, sections 44. It continues with more citations of Mass General Law. The CAFO shall, if it be the case, submit in writing to the mayor and city council a certification that is the CAFO's professional opinion, after an evaluation of all pertinent financial information reasonably available, that the city's financial resources and revenues are and will continue to be adequate to support such proposed expenditures or obligations without a detrimental impact on the continuous provision of the existing level of municipal services. If the CAFO fails to provide a certification as aforementioned within 7 days of a request for such certification from the city council or mayor, such appropriation order, financial transfer, ordinance revision, special legislation, or borrowing authorization may nonetheless be approved, but the absence of the certification of the CAFO shall be expressly noted in such order or vote. So when we look at that description of it, that aligns pretty well, I think, to the example that we have in our packet. One of my questions is, because I'm guessing this is mirroring language similar to Springfield's, and you might have familiarity with it. The concept of the CAFO not providing a certification, when is that most likely to occur? Under what circumstances would the CAFO effectively choose to not provide a response? to not provide a certification?
That is an excellent question. I have never had that experience in my entire time as CAFO of Springfield. There was always timely responses to both the council, whether it's an ordinance change or a suggestion, or the mayor, whether it's an investment and or transfer or some other financial matter that comes before the CAFO. I've never. And this is where it gets interesting because this is where Holyoke can create, its own ordinance as it relates to timeframes and expectations. I understand the question, Counselor, and this is where we're in the stage where let's make it, fit what Holyoke needs and what Holyoke wants. So, if that language is concerning as if it may be quote unquote a pocket veto or something where it's just they're going to stay silent and it goes into effect or goes ahead, then that's a discussion that both these committees should have and the council should have along with the mayor.
Did you
That
have a
is the
response?
question?
I believe I see the mayor's hand is up.
In the ordinance there that you just read, what describe what happens if there is no response after 7 days?
Which section were you in?
We are on page 5,
Nothing happens?
right in the section above where it says financial information at the top there. And it says, if the CAFO fails to provide a certification as aforementioned within 7 days of a request for such certification, such appropriation, order, et cetera, may nonetheless be approved. But the absence of the certification shall be noted.
Right. So currently, just as far as the process is concerned, like right now, we don't have a CAFO. It all comes to the mayor. And any transfer requests or appropriation or whatever the case, it comes in front of the mayor for a sign off. And what I have to do, I work together with the auditor. We have to make sure that whatever we're transferring, confirm whether or not the funds are there to be transferred before we forward to city. So my guess, well, not my guess, I think here, we're looking at the CAFO to be the budget manager of the city, to have a keen focus in that and making sure that whatever's coming to the mayor and to the council is indeed right. So it's really no different than our system currently, but the CAFO having a better foresight and controls, making sure that the mayor and the council that we're making informed decisions. And if there is no response by the CAFO, which, it can be maybe he's on vacation for 2 weeks or whatever, the mayor still has the authority to sign off on, just no different than kind of what we do now. It comes in front of the council, but making sure that there's a note there saying, hey, the CAFO hasn't really looked, you know what I mean? And making sure that it's communicated to the council that, yes, this was signed off, but just know the CAFO hasn't checked it, in case, for whatever reason, we need to follow up later or.
Or in which case the council could say, we're not willing to move forward at this
Yeah,
time without
table
it being
until the
certified.
CAFO comes back. I don't know.
Absolutely, and I think that also this ordinance, and I think it takes it almost to another level beyond budgetary transfers, which is absolutely the process currently. Where, if the council were to be looking at, an ordinance that might have a financial impact, right? And they want to get a report on what's that financial impact actually going to be, like to have somebody that has that skill set that can opine on that. The same way, like if you want an ordinance change, you're going to go to the law department. If you're looking for a personnel change, you'll go to personnel. If you want to know, and Councilor Rivera has certainly filed orders. I know others have as well, where they want to really get like kind of analysis. Before we make this decision, we want a full financial analysis on what it is. I know Councilor Jourdain and Councilor Vacan have also asked that, and those are great things to ask for, but this would allow for there to be a dedicated person that's responsible to respond to the council.
Well, in that same vein, and then I know Councilor Vacan has her hand up as well, because we just talked about in this list, it says appropriation order, financial transfer, ordinance revision. special legislation or borrowing authorization. Some of those in that list, I fully would understand the process, would seem very clear around there would be an order, there would be a conversation, it could not come with a request for the transfer to council unless there was a certification statement or the notation that it had not been addressed by the CAFO yet. But in terms of an ordinance, sometimes there's impacts you may not know. So when the ordinance committee is working on creating an ordinance, at which point would we know if the CAFO would need to provide an analysis if there was a financial impact? Because some ordinances would not have a financial impact, some might. So then how would that process work? Would it only occur if the ordinance committee asked for it? Or would ordinances need to be submitted to the CAFO for if there is a financial impact? Like, I wonder what the process is in Springfield, and I see it named here as an ordinance revision, which I think is interesting. It doesn't name ordinance of revision or ordinance adoption, because sometimes it's a new ordinance that might have a financial impact, not just or I guess it means revision of ordinance, and in general, like ordinances being revised.
Sorry, and I almost wonder, and TJ could, because he lived it in Springfield under this kind of, that might be, you want to move somebody. There's some orders about moving how the mid, min, max, setup works, right? And what would that be, right? If you were to say we can hire above the mid, that would be an ordinance revision. What's the financial impact? Rather than we want to name this street this, could there be a financial impact? I could see that getting a little messy, but I think it's really the financial ordinance revisions, because if you think about all of the salary schedules, if you think about all of the different types of ordinances that speak specifically to overtime, benefits, time off requests for non-bargained employees. I mean, there's a lot of examples there, but that's just one bucket of ordinances that.
But also an ordinance, we're doing raised crosswalks. We're doing, those speed humps. Those things have a financial impact as well.
Yep. So TJ might be able to speak a little bit more about some of those other types of changes.
Yeah, sure. I mean, the ordinance piece is kind of an important piece. I mean, generally, you typically, two ways I look at it. Generally, you look at new ordinances, you'll kind of just know that there's going to be a cost impact, so you just reach out to the CAFO's office to do an analysis either before or during the debate over the ordinance. Many times I've gotten ordinances requests ahead of time just so we can cost them out to see if they're even worth putting on the agenda. Oftentimes I'd get in the middle of it, hey, can you look at this to see if there's a cost impact to the city? And we would just, pause it for a minute. We'd do a quick analysis and make an assessment, issue a memo, issue a letter, whatever it may be at the time. And then there's just ones that, if it's crosswalks, I mean, use the crosswalk example you just used. If the department head is confident that the money's in the budget and it's just kind of ordinary maintenance, and as long as the money's available, they would just do a year-to-date budget report to confirm that the money's available, and that can take minutes to know. Or if they need to do a projection, they'll do a projection. If you're adding a lot more, to say, hey, and if they need to find another funding source because, say, the DPW doesn't have the funding, that's a conversation that has to happen with the mayor and the city council if it needs to be transferred. So I think it's really comes down to communication and relationships with the position, that there's a trust and knowing that the information is going to be honest and as accurate as possible. Budgeting is art, not a science, but you can get pretty spot on if you know what you're doing. So I really think it just comes down to what are you trying to do and when do you engage the CAFO position? And if you engage the CAFO position, because you may not need to based upon, like, I'm just using the current budget because we budgeted for it, or we have a surplus in OTPS, therefore it's okay to just move forward with it. Does that help?
Yes, thank you. Councillor Bacon?
Thank you. So I just wanted to confirm that the role that the auditor is currently providing relative to certifying that the monies are available for financial transfers in this model that we're discussing right now, that would transfer to the CAFO from the auditor, from as to how we're sitting today. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I'll answer the question. Yes, that's the accurate answer as it relates to breaking up some of the duties of the city auditor and spreading them out over the departments, including having the CAFO providing some oversight.
So the more robust aspect of it would be the pro forma impact, is what I hear you saying. That would be sort of an added level.
Yes,
Okay.
that's how I would envision it. That's how, if you're asking my advice, as this position gets approved, if it is, and how the process is, that's how I would advise it. I mean, I did provide a bunch of, and this is not written in anything of, but it's just ways to communicate everything that's happening so it's all open and transparent.
Thank you.
Rory, you want me to talk about this position?
Yeah, just because I know Councilor.
Unless you want to start it, I could.
No, I think it's fine. I pulled this particular one up because you already started going down the path of, we're talking about combining some positions. We're also talking about taking roles that exist in multiple positions and shifting them around. So, for example, where currently the treasurer handles that portfolio of long and short-term debt. In this case, it wouldn't be the treasurer collector. It would move to CAFO. So just, with Comptroller, Director of Internal Audit, kind of talk about how they work, and that harmony that you were talking about.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely the comptroller, essentially what the city auditor has way too many hats, and that's the form of government for virtually every city in town, or excuse me, city, because it's the town accountant that does it for the towns. But they wear way too many hats. There's segregation of duties. There's an inability to look at everything. I think your team is experiencing that currently. So the idea that is to break out the comptroller and create, instead of being the city auditor, it's the comptroller who is the lead accountant who maintains the general ledger, including accounts payable, accounts receivable, oversees payroll, does a lot of the reconciliation to ensure that the general ledger and cash meet and tie out, does all the tax filings as it relates to what needs to be done at the end of the year, assist with budget transfers and just kind of some of the finance stuff, just to provide the backup from an accounting perspective. The CAFO will take the lead on budget transfers, typically provide the insight onto what it is, but just to be the accounting check to say, I agree, there is money, the transfer is good, and they will execute. Once the order is adopted, they would execute that transfer and move the money to the appropriate line item, organ object. And then making sure you're reconciling timely. I know there's been some issues with DOR a little bit for timely reconciliation and getting things closed out. So you have all months closed out, and then period 13 is one of the critical periods that a lot of people don't talk about, because that's when you make all your adjustments to close the year by the end of September. And that's really an important piece to the comptroller's job. And then just making sure DOR is satisfied with the balance sheet, satisfied with the Schedule A. They're a huge part of setting free cash. They're a huge part of setting the tax rate, and making sure that all the details are there. So that is really the lead accountant's role. And they also typically are the ones that maintain Munis, maintain your system of record, but in your case, Munis. and they are the ones that make sure that payroll, not from like IT will be the ones doing workflow and all that stuff, but the comptroller is the ones to make sure that there isn't an issue with how things are getting done. The requisition process, the invoice process, all that stuff. The warrant process, including that too. So, Director of Internal Audit. This is a new, relatively new, not new to Springfield, not new to Boston, but new is becoming a big one where this one is an independent position that has the right to go in and kind of investigate anything they think is waste, fraud, and abuse. They maintain a hotline. They look at systems and see if there are issues. Typically, the way it work in Springfield, they would have their independence and go look at anything. If I caught something on a budget review, I would go to the internal auditor and say, "Hey, I need you to go in and look at." And I think I used this example last time. The police, not overtime, but the police special detail, and they would go in and say, "All right, let's look at it. Let's see." Really, what was happening is we weren't collecting as much as we were paying out, and it was one of those. Okay, how do we fix it? And then they come in with recommendations in a report and say, "Here's how you got to do it." And it goes both ways, where they can go do anything they kind of want, but then they also will take requests from departments, and so they can go in and say the DPW says, "You know what, I have a problem with my fuel system." And we don't know, we think there's something wrong or we don't have control of it. They can go in and do a real audit on it. But then they can also go into a department on their own and just say, "I feel something's off. Let's go take a look at it and go do that." So, and then they're the ones that are your external auditor. They'll manage the external audit. But it just has a high level of independence in that position. Should have a high level of independence in that position. Treasurer collector. This is where you break up some of the stuff that happens, and when you combine the positions, definitely when you combine treasurer collector, you want to make sure that you're collecting the revenue and then investing it appropriately, and the investments come from the treasurer. Could be with the advice of the CAFO. Safety liquidity yield is what it's called when you're trying to make sure you keep the principal safe so you can pay your bills. Liquidity is you need access to your cash, you get it quickly, and yield is the last piece, but important is how much can you invest and how can you invest it to achieve all three of those aspects. And the yield is the least important, but it's kind of the most important, but you need to make sure you're not locking it up for 2 or 3 years in a CD that you can't get access to as it relates to that. Tax title is a huge piece to make sure you get properties back on the tax rolls. And if you're willing to do repayment agreements to make sure people can keep their houses and stay in their places and do that is negotiated in the treasurer collector's office. And then just the cash. Cash is so important to make sure you reconcile your cash. If you can stay on top of that's a huge feather in your cap and the ability to kind of get that piece of it. And if that falls back, it just could cause cash flow problems. So,
Counselor Bacon?
Thank you. So relative to these differently configured and sometimes new positions, what is the vision in this draft ordinance as to how our current auditor and our current collector would be, those particular positions would be affected? Are they seen as fitting within one? one or two of the ones that are there? How is that consolidation or efficiency envisioned in this model that we're looking at?
So I think Kelly's going to answer that, but I know the mayor just wants to say something briefly, but we do want to answer that question.
No, I got to run, but happy to see these conversations rolling, keep going, engage in future conversations, and
You should tell him why you got to run. It's an important day.
the twins they turned 13 today.
Teenagers.
He's
In trouble.
man.
Happy
father of
birthday
a
to twins.
of two teenagers at once.
Boy and girl, 2 teenagers. But thank
We
you.
send our
everybody,
prayers
so
with
much
you.
for your time.
And congratulations.
Double trouble.
Yeah. But to answer your question, Councilor Vacan, and I know Kelly's here and can speak a little bit about people who are in existing roles now and how they would fit into this current structure.
Yeah, definitely. That's a good question because staff are anxious about that too. We do plan on retaining all the current staff. Well,
Except me.
somehow. We think that the people that are in the current roles are qualified to move into the proposed ones. Our tax collector's here, and she's very interested in learning about the new structure, and we believe she's very qualified to be the treasurer collector. Our current auditor, we believe, is also very qualified to continue auditing, and I don't know, how deep we can go into it, but we definitely want to retain.
Well, that's okay. I was just interested in a general level, not
Okay.
getting too deep. Thank
Yeah.
you.
You're welcome.
And I think it's also important to note I know we're here talking about this. I know tonight I find myself doing more of the talking, but this has been a process where we've had a number of folks internally at the table. We've sought their opinion. TJ and his team have been, because they're not here just working on this, they're actually here, as the mayor mentioned at the last meeting, we were able to get them through a state contract. We actually worked with Sean Cronin, who's like the head honcho at DOR, who has a very particular interest in seeing Holyoke thrive. He allowed for us to readjust a grant that we had already received to have TJ and his team come in and provide technical assistance beyond just capital improvement planning and some budget forecasting to actually be able to do this. So this is not just based on DOR's analysis over the years and the long-term analysis they did to come up with the financial policies and procedures manual. This is his own analysis, being in the departments, looking at our capacity and trying to figure out how we could reorganize. So we really do feel that we have some great, talented individuals already, that if we could just make some adjustments to the way offices are structured, they could do even greater than they're currently doing. And TJ, I don't know if you want to talk at all about that, just kind of your observations.
Sorry about that. Yeah, no, it's definitely, this is an opportunity for Holyoke at this particular time to take advantage of the change by having an appointed treasurer collector combined, and then kind of identifying these roles that make things more efficient. And the savings that could be had beyond what was presented is could be tremendous. That if you go through and do a detailed audit of your health insurance, if you do a detailed review of some of the operational expenses, and just kind of go through and find out where the inefficiencies are. And, that's the way you balance the budget without impacting services. And I think this is a huge opportunity to go department by department and find these efficiencies and have somebody who is professionally trained helping the comptroller, the internal auditor, the treasurer collector, they just pull it all together. I mean, there may be just, in one particular, reviewing fees every 2 years. I was required to review every fee every 2 years to make sure, A, it made sufficient revenue that as far as a policy decision, and B, it matched the region so it wasn't like ridiculously high, because there's oh, I'm drawing a blank on the name of the law case, but I'll let the lawyers talk about that. But there's a specific case that says your fees cannot exceed the cost to provide the service. And that's something that, all those little things that a person like a CAFO can come together and just say, okay, let's just really map out the financial future. Debt structure. If you have a declining debt structure, you'll be golden. I have not looked at Holyoke's debt structure yet, and that will be part of it as we get into it. But you have a declining debt structure, you can issue debt every year or every other year, depending on what it looks like, and that sets it up where you can do all the capital projects. So if you find a bunch of road projects that needs to be done, or building improvements that need to be done, it's just to pull it all together in one strategic vision with a professional that has been trained in it will be huge for Holyoke.
I just want to echo that.
Thank you.
I'm not a finance professional at all, and I could identify inefficiencies in every department, but I try to stay in my lane. So I think, the projection Rory said about savings is going to be much greater once we have like people in these roles. The structure we have now is super outdated, and so once we have a good structure, I think we'll have tons of efficiency. We're already seeing it across payroll and HR with the merging of the payroll functions in Munis ERP, and I think we'll see it in the assessors, tax collectors, auditing, in those departments. And we have systems that could be used instead of outsourcing and paying consultants to do it if we had the right structure and efficiencies in place. So thank you.
Excellent way to put it.
Thank you. And real quick, before I recognize
you.
Councilor Murphy Ramboletti, I just wanted to, before we go anywhere else, because there's an item 5, right, under ordinance, that the city council establish minimum eligibility requirements, such as a 4-year degree in accounting, finance, plus 3 years successful management experience for appointment as treasurer prior to the initial appointment. Since we're on treasurer collector right now, like, can you kind of like talk about the requirements with the position and the posting, the job posting for the treasurer collection, just to address that item 5, and we can move forward. I mean, you can. Yeah, no, I seen it on the job posting here. Just wanted to be able to talk about it so that is addressed within the people. Councilor Vacan and Councilor Jordan had filed this order, and I want to make sure that it gets kind of addressed in the whole mumbo jumbo. And since we're on treasurer and collector right now, it kind of makes sense to kind of get it done right now.
I also see that you have some questions baked into this document for us to discuss as well, because a few different places it says, do we want to say city or municipality? Do we who will they supervise is highlighted underneath supervisory responsibility.
Yeah, I think those were.
Is that the old? That might
I
be
think
the old.
when Jeffrey downloaded the PDF version, maybe it came out. Did Jeffrey give that to you? Yeah, so I think that's what happened. The notes might have came out from the other version.
From the doc, yeah.
'Cause he turned it into a Microsoft Word. I sent it as a PDF, but that's fine. Yeah, it was just verbiage. Like, I don't think, but it's up to you guys. You're free to, give feedback on that. But in terms of the education and experience, I think we're complying with the order, which was to have it be,
I have it in my
Yeah.
hand. If anything, it says I can read it for you. If anything, I have it in my-
bachelor's degree in finance, public or business administration, or equivalent degree required in addition to a minimum of 3 to 5 years experience in a municipal setting in a similar role. And also the certification by the Massachusetts Treasurer Collectors Association within 36 months of appointment and ability to be bonded, which I believe we support that.
So then, real quick, the document that I have here is an unedited or an edited version before you got to
Yeah,
that.
I'll forward what I forwarded to Jeffrey, so you have the regular version. He had to put it into Word because he thought he was going to project it on the screen, I guess. So
Yeah. It matches from what I hear you. What you're saying matches. And if Jeff, if you have it and you can put it up, that would be great. But if
Fine,
not,
I can shop. I
Yeah.
can
Yeah,
stop
if you can do
sharing.
that.
And I would also say that it's also based on the draft. All of these job descriptions that you see in front of you right now are based on the draft ordinances.
Mm-hmm.
So the council obviously is welcome to do whatever its will is.
Yep.
If you were to change the ordinance, for example, let's just stay focused on that educational requirement. If you were to say an associate's degree is fine rather than a bachelor's. Right now, the ordinance says shall be bachelor's. If you were to change it in the ordinance to associate's degree, when this job went to be posted and, we create an official job description, the job description itself would be updated to reflect the ordinance. That's a pretty regular practice in the personnel office.
And then, Tessa, and I know was your question on the same point? Is it different?
It's about the job descriptions. I mean, I don't know, but
Go ahead.
if you have another one.
No, I don't, because I saw Linda's hands.
Oh, I just,
Yeah, I'm done.
one of the things that I saw is that there's a residency requirement for the CAFO, and I would love to hear from TJ if that was perhaps a thing that do other cities do that? I was kind of surprised by that. I guess, just in general, I don't think it's a secret, but I'm not a huge fan of residency requirements. I think it applies to certain positions, but I guess I'm just wondering if there's any concern, and maybe I'm the only one who's concerned about it, but if there's concern from anyone else on how that may limit us in the future, because residency requirements are very problematic in my opinion, especially in this current market as someone who just spent 2.5 years looking for a house. So I guess I'm just wondering, TJ, what's your take? And then if other counselors, I'm kind of just trying to, I'm always willing to compromise. And I understand that compromise means you don't always get what you want. I guess I just want to hear what others think. So, yeah.
No, it's an excellent question because right now, just in general for CFOs,
Ordinances.
chief administrative officers, school business administrators / CFOs, residency requirements have been a challenge because it limits the pool of potential candidates. And it is, may not have been that case 10 years ago, but now most districts and cities and towns that we're in get very few candidates, if any, for many of these like upper level positions. Some of it's pay, but a lot of it is. I've been in interviews where people stand up and walk out when they say, "Hey, we have a residency requirement," and then they're like, "Well, I'm established in my community. My kids go to high school, and I'm not going to uproot them just to come take this job." And so it limits the pool. So I know it's important to some communities. It's becoming less and less important because of just the lack of talent that they're able to attract.
I agree, TJ. I would support not having a residency requirement because it does limit our ability to recruit and retain people. We had our recent assessor leave because there was no trajectory to grow because when our current main assessor retires, she will not be able to go into that place because of the residency requirement, because she has a home that she wants to retire and, stay in for the rest of her life. So.
And that's a perfect example of limiting a strong candidate.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Counselor Rivera, do you want to return to the job posting and talk about the language that's highlighted here, or do we want to move forward with Counselor Bacon's?
I was gonna go with Counselor Bacon's hand.
Okay. Counselor Bacon?
Thank you, Chair Rivera. So my question was around the qualifications for the combined treasurer collector. And I just wanted to clarify, because I was understanding they were bachelor's level, and I just wanted to clarify that was the case, and that we're focusing more on financial or accounting degrees than general management degrees. Is
Yeah.
that accurate? I'm looking at that draft form and I don't know if it's the same.
It looks like it says master's degree in the draft. But this is the
I think
not updated one?
there was-
Does it now say
You don't have the
bachelor's?
correct one.
Okay.
Yeah. No, but to Counselor Vacan's direct answer to Counselor Vacan, 100% 4-year bachelor's degree, concentrating in public administration, finance, accounting. That's the way the job description is written. That there would also be 3 to 5 years of management experience with an eye towards a municipal setting. And then also that in order to maintain the position, and keep in mind it's a 3-year term, that they would obtain their certification with the Mass Treasurers Collectors Association within 3 years. And that's actually how long it takes to obtain that from square one if you've never taken any of the classes. It actually takes 3 years to obtain that position. You can't do it any faster than that. Go ahead.
Would we also want to put in that if someone that had that certification, that certainly that would be preferred?
Oh, of course. Yeah, for sure. Yep.
And I mean, just speaking for myself, I'd rather see the degrees lean toward finance rather than the general administration.
Yep. So the way it's written right now is it says bachelor's degree in finance, public business administration, or equivalent degree required in addition to a minimum of 3 to 5 years experience in a municipal setting in a similar role.
Okay, and I'm just wondering, is there any, so in your mind, or from perhaps from the perspective of HR, would finance include in your minds accounting and all the things that might come under finance? I guess what I'm saying is I'd like to see the position more focused on finance than general administration.
Yes, it would definitely include accounting under finance umbrella. I think sometimes, people do business as a major thinking it's larger, and then they end up taking a lot of accounting classes, and then they might fall into a job or an internship where they're doing the accounting work. And so I wouldn't want to limit someone from not having an accounting degree when they probably have more experience than someone who might have accounting degree. So yeah, I definitely think it encompasses it under finance.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Can I ask what ability to be bonded means?
I'll let Rory speak to that.
Yep. So that's actually a legal requirement. That is something that we currently, the tax collector, myself, our 2 assistants, the chief procurement officer, the city clerk, her assistant, we can't hold our positions if we can't be bonded. It's an insurance policy that we take out to protect the city. And I'll use a couple examples to for what that actually means. Let's say you had a treasurer who wired themselves $10,000 or wired their friend consciously, like, I'm trying to do something, trying to get away with something, and sent somebody some money. This insurance policy protects the city, right? Because now, I can also tell you, it's not as simple as just calling up Geico and getting a policy. You get a background search. I mean, depending, like, the bond I have is greater than the bond my assistant has, is probably greater than the bond the chief procurement officer has. I have a specific treasurer's bond. There's specific treasurer collector's bonds. It protects the city is what it is, but not everybody can get it.
Does this mean must demonstrate their ability to be bonded?
You can't,
is that what that means?
According to Mass General Law, you can't be, I couldn't be sworn in without getting a bond. Right?
Okay. Right,
Like,
so it's a requirement
the minute
that you
my
must
name,
have the ability to be
correct.
bonded.
Yes, and they do a thorough background check. They check your credit score. If you have a bad credit, and that also can impact how expensive the bond is. So that's what it means. But it's important to put that out there because you might have somebody that meets all the other qualifications, but maybe, they maybe they did something not, raising to the level of being arrested and put in jail, but, they did something, that shows up on a credit report. They did something that won't allow them to be bonded.
Understood. Thank you. I also want to,
I've terminated an employee for not being able to get bonded because they had said they had the ability to get bonded and couldn't, so we had to terminate them.
thank you. I want to recognize Counselor Kevin Jordan has joined us. Welcome, sir. Is your hand
hi,
up
how are you
because you
doing?
want to speak or just be recognized?
I wanted to ask Rory a question about the bond issue when we has a moment.
Absolutely.
Go right ahead.
Go for it.
Oh, good. So does the bond also protect us from like treasurer incompetence?
Unfortunately, I'm sorry, continue, and then I'll answer.
Well, like, for example, say a treasurer was to EFT a person pretending to be an employee of the gas and electric and sent them $10,000 of tax money because they pretended they were a manager at the G&E and they failed to verify who they were even talking to. And then it turned out to be somebody in New York City. And then they said, oh, these things happen. I could have never known. When it was obvious from just basics that that was clearly not a representative of the Hoya G&E. So I wonder if our bond protected us for that.
Unfortunately, bonds don't protect in those scenarios. There are other things that we should be doing and are currently doing to ensure that episodes like that never happen. And I mean, just today, I mean, when I say every day, I'm not, that's not hyperbole at all. Like earlier today, I got an email. It looks like it's legitimately from somebody that works at DPW, not a department head, just a random DPW laborer sent me an email saying, hey, Rory, what's going on? I need to update my direct deposit info. How do I do that? Very innocent. And if I wasn't paying close enough attention to check the email, to do this, to do that, who knows? Someone else might. These are the types of things that we need to do on a regular basis. And unfortunately, the bonding, that insurance policy wouldn't protect us. Other types of insurance policies could, cybersecurity, having things in place. But unfortunately, no, counselor, not in that scenario.
So maybe we need to, as part of this, look at our coverages because
100%.
In that case, it was 10 grand, but
Yep.
that could easily be 100 grand too, in a future mistake.
There's been potentially a lot more than $10,000. I'll leave it at that. If the city had fallen victim to, and thankfully we haven't. Unfortunately, we wouldn't even be able to get a cybersecurity policy right now because we weren't meeting the bare minimum standards of cybersecurity until recently, as it related to multi-factor authentication, and other types of kind of anti-phishing testing. They won't even quote you if you don't have certain types of protections already built in. And just to bring it back to this conversation, this is actually why having a centralized financial operation, having somebody that's dedicated to focusing in on the IT and folding IT infrastructure into this overall restructuring is so important, because that is, rather than leaving it to a third-party contractor to manage, which has been the case for a long time, having somebody internally managing that contract, doing testing, overseeing, that testing regime, looking for our vulnerabilities, in addition to obtaining a policy. That's how we're going to protect ourselves moving forward. This is the type of stuff that keeps me awake, counselor, on a regular basis. And I know I've frustrated people because I've been pushing the multi-factor authentication, but it is really important for us to do, and we're doing it. We're at the point now where these things are actually happening. It's exciting to think that if we had the centralized operations, we could really take it to the next level ensure that taxpayer money is protected all the time, 24/7, no matter who's in office.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rory.
I wonder if we could also look at that question around under supervisory responsibility. Who will they supervise? And is that in your current draft named?
It is. It is, and I emailed the ones I sent earlier to you all. So who they supervise, who the responsibility is?
Yes,
Is
so
that the
underneath
one?
supervisory responsibility in your draft, can you just name what you have?
Yep, supervises all department employees, developing job direction, assigning tasks, and evaluating personnel performance. So it's actually in the chart Rory has,
The organizational
the
chart.
organizational chart, which I think you all have a copy of too. Yeah.
So to speak even plainer about it, the treasurer collector would oversee minimum of 4 staff. I mean, that's what we're talking about right now. It would be, they'd have 2 assistants, 1 assistant tax collector, 1 assistant treasurer, and then 2 revenue collection specialists. They would also, there is some talk about, since they would be absorbing the parking, and we talked a little bit about this last time, it just seems like a natural fit for many different reasons, where they would handle parking permits, the parking tickets and everything else, that they may also, help coordinate some of the parking enforcement action. That, that's part of a larger conversation, but that would also, it's not on that organizational chart, but it would fit under here as well.
Thank you. Are there any other questions?
Yeah, I was going to
concerning-
ask the same.
Yeah.
Councilor Jordan raised his hand. I know not fairly new, but you came in late, so I'm sure you have some questions that you came in with. Feel free to do so.
I wanted to ask, did the question come up earlier about if any of these new appointments, whether it's ours or the mayor or the CAFO's appointees, are these going to be in the professional supervisors union, or are these going to be external? These will be Schedule A employees? Because I wanted to ask that question.
Yep, that's a great question. And Counselor, I'll refer you to that. It didn't specifically come up, but we did go over the slide that it should have been sent separately too as a PDF. It looks like a page of our budget book. We did go over that in depth, and we certainly can revisit it. You'll see the classifications there, and if you see a GR classification, not PSA in front of it, but a GR classification, that means Schedule A. So for all of the positions that we're talking about currently, they would all go into Schedule A. And one of the other things that we talked about was that when we were reviewing this and putting numbers in, specifically with CAFO, but it's true for any of the other ones that would be new, is that we're respecting, as we should, the current ordinances, which is that you can't hire above the mid-range in Schedule A. And so that's why what we've put here is within that min to mid range for anyone to be hired new.
Okay.
And so would there be a combined increase as a result of this? Because I know that some positions are, sort of being removed, but those folks might be moved into these new positions. Like I know the 2 administrative assistant positions are, under this plan zeroed out.
Yep.
And so that would mean the loss, for example, of 2 NAGE employees.
Actually, no.
From the union?
No, you're right in what you're looking at, but if you look at the revenue collection specialist, so we add a second revenue collection specialist, which replaces the administrative assistant. So a couple key takeaways: the positions that we're talking about removing, positions that are not filled that would be removing to do this are also Schedule A, so there's no collective bargaining impact as it relates to that. we're not taking away any union positions. We're also not necessarily adding any union positions specific to PSA.
Because it's a swap
Correct.
within
Yep.
the same union, different title.
Correct.
Okay. Can you explain what 9, or maybe Kelly can, what 9-30 versus 1010, 1020, what those codes mean?
Those are if you got to look at this one, Kel. It's the new NAGE rates. So like 9 is tax collector, 10 is treasurer. Yeah.
Your microphone.
Almost like the grade and step, sort of like the code.
Like we
you
have
can
Schedule
find-
A.
Yeah, you can find it on
Okay.
the end of their union contract, which is posted on. I could send it to you, but you can find it on the personnel website.
Absolutely.
And thank you. Before I recognize Councilor Vacan, Councilor Jordan, were you all set?
Yes, sir. All set. Thank you.
Awesome. Councilor Vacan?
Thank you. For some reason, I'm not seeing the job description, so I just wanted to understand for the treasurer collector description, Rory, are you saying that the parking enforcement is in that job now, or are you saying that we might want to consider adding that into that job position?
So as it sits currently, parking. If we just take parking, right? The clerk's office issues there's a dozen permits that the clerk's office issues. There's some permits that are issued by the Department of Public Works. There are parking garage and on-street parking permits that had been issued by the third-party vendor we used to use when we had a contracted service. And when we got rid of that, it became the Department of Public Works, but they never really built it into their workflow properly. And it's something that they've raised is an issue kind of down there. If we could kind of help them out a little bit.
Ticketing?
The ticketing, but also actually just the issuance of parking permits. So like, in the, yeah. And so now, how does this all fit into the tax collector's office currently? And she's here. She's probably, can speak to this if you want a little bit more in depth, but it's actually in her budget to pay for the parking tickets. It's in her budget.
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah, it's in her budget, and it's her deputy tax collector, and this is something that almost every community has. They have a deputy tax collector, which is an agent. You don't pay them; they get paid off of some fees.
Yeah.
It's her deputy tax collector that also handles the parking ticket collection. So her office is already dealing with the parking tickets, the enforcement officers in there on a regular basis to go over tickets, dealing with the people who receive tickets, dealing with the appeals process. And then when we start talking about the combined treasurer collector now being the one responsible for accepting all of the revenue, parking permits being some of that revenue, it just made sense. Let's just bring it all under one roof and really centralize it.
Okay, so it is in there now?
Yes.
Okay.
Some of it is. This would expand it a little bit more. Make it. Let me not say expand. It would formalize an informal process, if that makes sense.
Okay, thank you.
Of course.
Are we saying that falls underneath where it says essential functions 2 performs all duties relating to the collection of taxes, fees, and other monies due to the town?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
And you don't believe that it needs to be more specific? The sort of the generality of it is what you're preferring here between yourself and the HR department? Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Are there any other questions about the other job descriptions? I have a couple questions about some of the language that's in the ordinances specifically, but while we have Kelly here, I wonder if anyone else wants to name anything about the job descriptions, or if you want to say anything else, Kelly?
No, I just want to share that Councilor Bacon and Councilor Jordan, I shared the job descriptions with you. I heard Councilor Bacon say she didn't have them, so I just forwarded them.
Thank you.
And I'll send them to you, Councilor Rivera.
Okay, so hearing no other questions about the job
I
description.
haven't had a chance to really look at them in depth yet.
Okay. Understood. Going back into the ordinances, I have a question around the section requests for information from school department, which is page 5. It seems to identify a position called the Secretary of Administration and Finance. And I wonder if that is a different name in our current structure, because I don't see a role named that in the restructure chart.
So two things. So I have to, when you say page 5, just so
Yeah.
I make sure I'm following along, which document are you looking at? Are you looking at the document that the law department sent?
If you go to the ordinance changes
Yep.
that are proposed.
Yep.
And then you go to 1, 2, 3, the 4th section.
Of the ordinances themselves, not of the document, just so I can follow along.
This is the item number 1.
Okay.
And everything associated with item 1, the packet behind that.
Mm-hmm.
It says, the school department shall notify the Secretary of Administration and Finance that the CAFO, Director of Internal Audit, or other employee, et cetera, et cetera. And then it refers to the secretary
Yep.
2 other times in that section.
Yep. So the
and
sec-
so I wondered if we
this-
had to rename that to
No,
one
so-
of the positions, or who that was.
That's the state. That's just a formal way of saying
Okay.
the Department of the Secretary of A&F, Administration and Finance. Sean Cronin, who I mentioned earlier, that is the person that kind of gave us the green light. They're the Secretary of Administration and Finance. Again, some of this is, just like you might see language specific to the school department that says that they must report to the commissioner, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's just inferred that that's the Commissioner of Education.
In this case, though, because we're creating a Department of Administration and Finance,
It gets
I think
confusing, yeah.
For clarity, we
Yep.
may want to say the State Secretary of Administration and Finance,
Absolutely.
or add in
Yeah.
language, just, hereafter named the Secretary, so
Absolutely,
that it's clear.
absolutely. But I didn't want anyone to think we're like,
Yeah.
there's another position we need to talk
I
about
wondered,
yet. No.
yeah, I was like, where did that come from? Okay, the other thing is, underneath the next section, composition, C, says the CAFO may appoint a deputy chief administrative and financial officer who shall be qualified by particular education and expertise. The powers and duties of the deputy shall be such as are designated and assigned from time to time by the CAFO. And in the temporary absence or disability of the CAFO, the deputy shall temporarily assume the duties of the CAFO, subject to the approval of the mayor. So who is that deputy? Or should that section be stricken?
You could strike that section. I think that there's other sections of ordinance that are similar to that. Again, until a position is on a salary schedule, it might exist. Like, if you look at our charter, for example, I mean, we have a city almoner. There's positions that exist within the city that are created by ordinance or by charter that we couldn't fill if we wanted to because there's no salary schedule. And so I think here this is just saying that, if it is, but again, there's similar language that exists in other parts of the ordinance. For clarity's sake, I completely agree with you. Again, it's not like the law department sat down and hand wrote each one of these.
Mm-hmm.
They took bits and pieces
Right.
and put it together for
Yes.
what would work, with the understanding that there would be edits made. So feel free to cut things that you feel, for clarity's sake, it's not.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Counselor Murphy-Ormaletti, and then Counselor Bacon.
Just to follow up to that, I guess when I was reading this, I was thinking that actually was one of those things that if we put it in there, then it's there, and we don't have to, down the line, 10, 15 years down the line, we have to create a whole new thing. So I guess, is that also, I'm fine with striking it, but was that, I guess I was just, when I read it, I was thinking more long-term, like, because it says may appoint.
Yep.
Instead of like shall or will or has to.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
Okay.
But I just
Okay.
I want to be crystal clear.
No,
'cause
yeah, I
know
appreciate
this
that.
has come up before.
Yeah.
Is that the positions that are being talked about are the ones, when we say there's a net decrease of position, I don't want there to ever be any kind of, oh, well, it said in this section there was an assistant, but it's not reflected here. They're trying to do an end. No, there's none of that. This is fully transparent. You are 100% correct. That's with an eye towards the future. If it makes sense to cut it now and take it back up, fine. Leave it, great. All of this is subject to appropriation. All of this is subject to the council's approval, regardless of what's in there.
Yep. Thank you.
So that's
it.
Madam Chair, can I just comment real quick on that, just because this occurred in Springfield? But it was put in the language of the Chapter 468 deliberately to have the ability to have a deputy if and when the workload gets to a level that they may need one. And it took 5 or 6 years in order for me, when I was CAFO, probably 10 years total before a CAFO needed a deputy in Springfield. So do what you want with it, but it's one of those nice to have if you need it and if everyone can coalesce around it. But we didn't use it for at least a decade.
Thank you. Counselor Bacon?
Thank you. And that leads nicely into my question, because when we're looking at Springfield, we're looking at the third largest city, and unfortunately, Holyoke is just barely making it into the definition of a city. So in terms of function, I totally understand that all these different functions have to be accomplished, whether you're a small city or a large city. But relative to scale, do we have any comparable sized budgets that we can look to relative to the structure that we're considering? And I just want to be clear, I haven't had a chance to digest the 20-something page draft ordinance at this point, but I'm wondering if we have the ability to do any side-by-side with just, generally speaking, the numbers of staff. I do appreciate the budget comparisons that we have gone over tonight, but I was just wondering if there's any benchmarks available to numbers of individuals needed to accomplish the functions in a very small city. Thank you. And it doesn't have to be an immediate answer tonight.
So just for clarification, the question was communities comparable in size and budget that are looking towards or have currently a CAFO?
A similar, a finance department.
Yeah. We talked briefly about this at the last meeting. We certainly can.
Yes, you did.
And we can. And Counselor, your question is a good one. We can certainly follow up with more specifics. I would say that through the research we've done, and I realize this is anecdotal, and we can back it up, with the data, but just anecdotally, you see very small towns and you see very large cities all moving in this direction, right? Whether it's under the 43C, which I know we're not moving in that direction, you see it where they have rather than having a town accountant, because as TJ was saying, they wear a lot of hats. We're talking about small communities with smaller budgets than ours, that actually adopt a centralized finance operation, and they name it finance director. They might not call it a CAFO. They might not call it a CFO. They call it a finance director.
Right.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be an exact match in terms of the title.
Sure.
And I don't have a problem with changing the organization, but what I'm just trying to get a sense of is the scale.
Yeah, and I think that really speaks to what Kelly mentioned about some of the efficiencies that we know we can create already when we talk about the net loss of 2 full-time employees. We see that there could be potential as we move forward and adopt technology to a greater scale. We could see even further reductions in that. But in our research, we are on par. We're not oversized by any stretch. In some ways, you might say certain offices are a little under. But this right sizes everything that would work for the city of Holyoke, the size.
So you feel, so you feel it's comparable from the reviews you've done, is what I hear you saying?
Absolutely, absolutely. I will credit Councilor Jourdain because a few years back, but I was in this role, he in this chamber, he asked me to go and look at what other communities are doing. He's like, you can go look at what other communities are doing, learn some best practices, and see how things are organized. And this, for at least me, is where a lot of this is coming from. When I see some of our neighboring communities that are doing it the right way, even with the struggles they face, the same kind of socioeconomic struggles, everything else, and they're able to get things done in a timely fashion. They're able to get things done without making headlines. It's just clockwork. It's because they've broken down those silos between departments. They've gotten people cross-trained. They've adopted technology, and they've centralized their operations.
Well, you do know there's at least two of us in this meeting tonight that have been big fans of improving our technology for over 10 years, right? With
Absolutely.
food, et cetera.
Absolutely, absolutely,
Thank you.
absolutely right.
Councillor Bacon, are you set at this point?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Okay. I have two last questions, and maybe others have more, but I also know we're hitting 8:30. I'm hoping that we can review the next section of ordinances that says selection of the CAFO, specifically how that screening committee is set up and why it's set up in the way that it is, what the implications of that are. And then I would like, before we close to the charter and rules section, us to look at the legal memorandum about the charter language that will need to be changed in order for us to go to to shift from even just having an elected treasurer to an appointed treasurer. TJ, are you able to talk through the process of selection of a CAFO and why it's set up in this way and the implications of it?
If I'm remembering what I read or what I received related to your draft, I think it kind of mirrors a version, if not the version, of the how Springfield has done it through Chapter 468. And Rory, you can correct me if I'm wrong. But the key part is to have a process that has all the stakeholders that would be involved in the like the CAFOs would be involved in their, areas of expertise. So you'd have someone from the school department, someone from the school committee, someone from the city council, the public, a few people from the public. Thanks, Rory. And then have a process where the committee then meets and kind of does either a smaller version, does their first round of interviews, and then you go and do like public interviews, and then they make a recommendation of a few, one or two or three candidates to the mayor to make a recommendation to the city council in Holyoke's case. So the screening committee is just really what you want it to be, what represents Holyoke, and what the Holyoke, where you feel that the public and folks that you need to be involved. So really, I think it's just a matter of just this. I would argue could just you make it your own if it makes more sense for Holyoke. If you make it bigger, make it smaller. Just depending on how you want it. But it's just 4 members, and then you want people. You do want someone with financial expertise, just so they can make sure that the person is hiring is a professional. That's probably the only one I would say is really not the most important one, but you need people to make sure that Holyoke's protected, Holyoke is supported, Holyoke has the resources they need, and that the person knows what they're doing. I hope that answers your question.
Yes. Does anyone in the committee or in attendance have any questions around that? Or do folks feel like this is the right screening process? Or are they interested in seeing shifts made to it?
I'll speak if I may. I mean, that makes a lot of sense to me. I feel okay with it. So that's me.
Okay, hearing no other comments. Are there any other questions on ordinances before we move to looking at the legal memorandum around the changed charter language? Okay, hearing none. The last piece, I think, is to look at the legal memorandum that we have from our city solicitor that shows the sections of the charter that would need to be changed as a result of moving from treasurer to from elected to appointed. And Jeffrey, if you could put this up on the screen. We have a modification of section 6, which is our section that describes the election of city officials. And it says, of course, failure to elect, vacancies, and disability of clerk or treasurer. The first sentence currently says, at such municipal election, the qualified voters shall give in their votes by ballot for mayor, city clerk, city treasurer, members of the city council, and of the school committee. The new language would just strike out city treasurer. Section 2113, assistant city treasurer, appointment and term, would modify that first sentence. Right now it says the city treasurer shall, as soon as may be after he has been elected and has qualified, appoint with the approval of the mayor and assistant city treasurer to serve during the term of the city treasurer, by whom appointed unless sooner removed by the city treasurer. The new language that's proposed here would be the city treasurer shall, as soon as may be after he has been appointed and has qualified, and then the ellipsis there. And then section 38, city treasurer, modification of the editor's note, which says, as to the election of a city treasurer pro tempore by the city council, etc. The new language would say, as to the appointment of the city treasurer pro tempore by the city council. And then division 3, city treasurer, modification of the footnotes charter reference section, with a new language saying appointment and term of the city treasurer and vacancies in such office. Do folks have any questions about this or comments about this section of the changes that would need to be made? Yes, Councilor Murphy.
Did we have that on our attachments?
We should be. It was in our packets and the tables.
Hold on. I think it was Councilor Bacon. Hold on.
I'm just not seeing it, but so many got thrown at us
I
today,
know,
it's hard
yeah.
to sort them out.
Yeah, we're swimming in lots of paper. That's for sure. Jeffrey, if
Well,
it
I
has,
can look at it later in more depth.
sure. Yes, and it's also, thank you, Jeffrey, for projecting it on the screen. And Jeffrey, if you could make sure it's emailed out if it wasn't, that would be wonderful.
I may be missing it. I'm not saying it's not there. It's
Sure.
just too much to find.
Yes, no worries at all. Yes, Councilor Murphy-Ramboletti?
Thank you. It's a small thing, but could we just make sure that there's no gender for
Yeah.
the new language on section 2113?
Yes,
He or she or they, I don't care.
they have been
but
appointed.
Thank you.
Or just use the position, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, after
totally.
the treasurer has been appointed. Yes, I like that. That's elegant.
Madam Chair, I'm just noting that it was one of the documents that was emailed on Friday.
Thank
On
you.
Friday? Okay.
Yeah.
Many
Memo
documents,
on
though, so
changes.
fully understandable.
Okay.
If we're not finding
There's
everything.
so many, it's like changes of what?
Yes.
I'll
one of-
find it.
One of my questions is, this doesn't address changes that might happen if we then combine treasurer collector, yes? So I don't know if Solicitor Bissonnette, if you are here, if you could weigh in on that. Is this enough, or would we then also need to make other changes to the charter if we are planning to make this change now of not just having a tax collector or now an appointed treasurer, but now that they're appointed, we have the capacity to combine? Does that lead to other charter changes that we also have to get language for? I'm actually not sure he's here. He might have had to step out.
Can I ask?
It looks like Solicitor Bissonnette might have had to step out or is not here currently.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Yes.
I I saw that memo, and it would, my clarifying question really would end up being for Solicitor Bissonnette, but the way I interpreted that memo was that those are the changes that are going to be required to be put in Muni Code based on action that's already taken place, i.e. the vote, the special act that the council passed, and then the vote of the citizens in January. I know there's going to have to be additional charter changes. I just think that memo was more instructing Muni Code on how to change the charter based on what was already done. So I guess that was my interpretation.
Oh, okay. All right.
But I obviously defer to the law department.
Okay. So it may be that we're still waiting for more charter change language that we would need if we wanted to combine, because that item 3 very much specifically says that the city of Holyoke amends any charter, ordinance, or any other regulations relative to its tax collector and combines the office with the city treasurer.
Yep. So, and there's other changes too that absolutely need to take place that we've talked about the soldiers
commission,
home.
yes.
Like right now, the treasurer elected as ex officio on that should become the clerk, if that would the will of the body. The treasurer being appointed acting mayor and the mayor's absence, that was not addressed specifically in the
Okay.
special act. The combined treasurer collector piece, because of the sequencing of everything, right now, the term of the treasurer and the term of the collector, even if whether they're merged or separate, is the same. They're both due up this January. If you look at the ordinance, essentially by adopting that ordinance, it combines the two positions. It speaks to how they're appointed, without a required charter change. But you're already doing all these other charter changes, so why not get it all done?
Yes, and we also, for example, have one that we've left tabled in council that's specific to making another change, because it doesn't make sense to submit several home rule petitions and make our state legislative team move all of them separately. It makes more sense to do the work as holistically as we can for their sake and also ours, as they need to navigate it through that process, to get it all together into one and then send it together. Okay. Are there any other questions before we adjourn? I know we did a lot of work delving into a lot of these documents. I know folks are still needing to digest them. I'm still digesting them. And I have no doubt that, we'll schedule more meetings in the future for us to continue having this conversation. Is there anything that anyone wants to name for the record that they're hoping to see in a different form, or information they're hoping to still see gathered that we haven't named? Yes.
No, not for me. I mean, I still am digesting stuff. I just really wanted to take an opportunity to thank our treasurer, our personnel, the mayor. I've been watching firsthand, everyone here, how much work this has taken. So I just wanted to name that for the record, that I appreciate it. But other than that, for me specifically, I've been able to reach out to TJ. Thank you. I encourage others to do the same and continue doing that. But I feel like, I think we're in a good place so far.
All right. Hearing no other voices, seeing no other hands.
So I think for ordinance, just in general, I'll entertain a motion to table items 1, 4, and 5.
Moved.
To the next meeting. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor, roll call vote. Councilor Bacon,
Yes.
Councilor Jenny Rivera. I don't think I see you. Oh, yeah, you're still up there. That's fine. Councilor McGrath Smith.
Yes.
Councilor.
Sorry.
Oh, there you
Yes.
go. Yes. And Councilor Israel Rivera. Yes. And then I'll entertain a motion for ordinance committee to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
That was a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And then roll call vote. Councilor Bacon,
Yes.
Councilor Jenny Rivera,
Yes.
Councilor Israel Rivera. Yes, and then Counselor McGrath Smith.
Yes. For charter and rules, I'll entertain a motion for us to table items 2 and 3.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Roll call vote, Murphy Garmaletti,
Yes.
McGrath Smith, yes, Bacon,
Yes.
and motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
night, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.